Today, we're getting under the hood of women's health with Latoya, an employee benefits leader and the founder of the Fibroid Pandemic, an answer to the frustration she experienced during her own journey with uterine fibroids. Latoya will be getting under the hood of fibroids.
So I was actually first diagnosed with fibroids well over 10 years ago. I was in my mid-30s. And I used to say that it was by mistake or by happenstance. But now that I'm on this side of my journey, it was truly divine order. I didn't really understand uterine fibroids at all until, hindsight is 2020. So after going through my initial 4-year healing journey, I later looked back and realized that I had been experiencing a ton of different symptoms. Some of the most common symptoms that I did experience were extreme lethargy to a point where I didn't have like any energy to go out and like hang out with my son outdoors because I was always so tired. As soon as I came home from work, the first thing I did was just get in bed. Menorrhagia, which is heavy in our prolonged menstrual cycles and really bad periods, to a point where I was bleeding over 11 days straight. If you can only imagine how impactful that is on your life, right? But also I did experience pelvic pain, bloating, pain during physical intercourse. It was not fun. It wasn't pleasurable at all. It wasn't the good type of pain. It was really horrible pain. And some of the symptoms that I later developed, not understanding that they were attributed to uterine fibroids, which is very common, but it's not really talked about that much, is heart palpitations. And the reason why is because of fibroid, we're blocking the iliac vein, which recycles the blood from your lower extremities to your heart, tingling and numbing in my fingers as well as my lower extremities. I didn't even know what fibroids were. I didn't even know that there were fibroids on my uterus. So basically, my diagnosis is a little bit, I guess, unorthodox for lack of better words. So my then boyfriend, who's now my husband, he and I agreed that we did not want to have an unplanned pregnancy. I travel a lot for work, and I knew taking the pill was not going to work for me. So we both agreed that I would have the Mirena IUD implanted, which I did. 5 years later, I went to go get it removed. My then OBGYN, who I had been going to for 12 and a half years, excuse me, she asked me, hey, I don't see the IUD. Did you remove it? And to be honest, I didn't even know that that was a thing. I was completely unaware that people had the capability to remove the IUD themselves. I don't know if that's a thing or what, but I had not. So she sent me into ultrasound. Now, I want to make sure I'm very clear here. This is all within the same exact doctor's office visit setting. She didn't send me across town. She didn't have me come back a different day. This is literally in my doctor's office, a couple doors down the hallway. I went in to go get the ultrasound performed. The ultrasound tech, very nice, great bedside manners. She performed a topical ultrasound, was unable to locate the IUD. So she then performed a vaginal ultrasound. She said, okay, there's an IUD right there, front and center. Go ahead and get back dressed. So as I'm getting dressed, she asks me, again, good bedside manner. She says, how are your fibroids coming along? I paused and I said, well, what's that? I heard of the word or the term. I had no idea what fibroids were. She looked mortified in her face. She's like, I'll let the doctor talk to you about it. I go, that was awkward, but okay, no problem. I get back in there with the doctor, and she's behind her cherry wood desk, beautiful screen TV. This was well over 10 years ago. So if you can imagine, screen TVs, flat screen TVs, they weren't that popular back then. So the doctor's pulling up her calendar to reschedule me because by that time, so much time had passed during my doctor's visit that she could not go back in to try to remove the IUD. So she needed to reschedule me. As she's throwing all these different dates, I said, time out. Can we talk about the fibroid thing or those fibroids or whatever it is that the ultrasound tech mentioned? And she goes, oh, okay, yeah. Well, they look rather large. Question, do you plan on having any more children? And I had I believe we just got engaged. And I go, well, am I planning to have any more children? I'm not necessarily planning to have any more children at the moment, but I'm going to be getting married soon. I mean, I guess I want to have the option. Like, it wasn't even a thought. So she says to me, well, if you don't plan on having any more children, I recommend a hysterectomy. And if you can imagine going to get your IUD replaced and leaving with the recommendation to have a hysterectomy, never once explaining what fibroids were, never once saying they were non-cancerous tumors of the uterus, never once explaining that you could potentially change your diet, change your lifestyle, and mitigate a lot of the symptoms. Never once saying there were 4, 5, 6 other options I could potentially consider that may be possibly suitable for my needs before jumping off a cliff and having a hysterectomy. I left that doctor's visit feeling unseen, unheard. I was extremely emphatic about not wanting a hysterectomy at all. That just was not an option. It was just moving way too fast. I get in the car and I felt really lost. I mean, I had been going to her for 12 and a half years. Who are you? Who am I to you? Like, I just felt like I was just like a number to her at that time. And to add fuel to the fire, they called me a few days later to schedule the hysterectomy. I was emphatic, literally sitting there in my doctor's office telling her, no, I don't want to have it. No questions asked. They called me a few days later to schedule that hysterectomy. If you can imagine how appalled, how taken aback I was. I mean, it was a slew of emotions. I was so confused. I thought I had an amazing relationship with my OBGYN. I loved her. And now to be sitting on what I say, sitting on an island on my own, trying to figure this all out. And that actually started my 4-year-long journey. The way that I managed the fibroid pain was a combination of just about everything. I had ibuprofen in every single purse, every wallet in my car, at work, at home. I practically had ibuprofen on speed dial. And I, going through the educational process, I realized that that was not conducive to my healing, nor was it conducive to my overall health, because that's why I get my liver checked on a regular basis now. But then I turned to juicing. Juicing, it changed me. Juicing allowed me to breathe deeper. Juicing allowed me to relax. Juicing, so I make my own juice. I literally flood my body with organic, fresh fruits and veggies. And I started doing my own recipes, just researching different things, different ingredients, turmeric, ginger. I love green juice. I really focus on not being, I'm very intent about not adding any type of additional additives. No milk, no almond milk, definitely no soy milk, no juice, no water. I allow it to make its own consistency as I do with my smoothies. I love it. And it just really helps with the bloating. It helps keep me regular. Because if you guys know anything about fibroids, one of the common symptoms that I didn't mention is actually constipation. If you can imagine what it feels like to go 4 days without voiding, that's very painful. So a combination of juicing, and then I also turned to reading different medical journals, scholar articles. I embarked on doing some yoga. I really focused on doing some qigong, and then the breathing exercises. Breathing was a huge outlet for me. I remember sometimes I would even breathe. So I'll do it first thing in the morning before my feet touch the floor, and then at night, right before I go to bed at night. And interestingly enough, I remember so many days where I would do my deep breathing exercises before I start my day. I would literally deep breathe myself back to sleep. And I'll wake up like, oh my God, wait, I got to get my day started. So those are some of the most common things. And then I also really focus on what I was exposing to my body, because I understood that this was a complete lifestyle shift, like a complete paradigm shift. So I really started focusing on the sanitary products. I really focus on premium, toxic-free sanitary products. That has helped tremendously. I've noticed where my menstruals have gone from 11 days when it was at its worst to about 4 days. And we're talking 4 days, really, with the first 2 days being the heaviest. And I no longer have to plan my vacations around my period. Let's just be honest. I'm no longer planning intimate moments with my husband around my period, right? I'm no longer having surprise um, periods anymore. So those are some of the most common ways in which I personally manage my fibroid pain. For me, embarking on my fibroid healing journey, I did my research for 4.5 years before I acted on anything at all. After going through veganism, vegetarianism, yoga, qigong, etc., I eventually landed on having what's called uterine fibroid embolization, also known as uterine artery embolization, UFE or UAE. And basically, with that procedure, it is an interventional radiologist. And what they do is they take aluminum pellets and block off and they feed it into the artery that's feeding the blood supply to the fibroid. So basically, they're blocking the blood supply to the fibroid. What that does is it helps to shrink the fibroid. It helps to mitigate a lot of your symptoms. You're back on your feet. I was back on my feet within maybe I would say 2 weeks. I say 2 weeks because I really just wanted to allow my body time to heal and not really try to force myself back too quickly. You leave with a Band-Aid. It's not a one size fits all. It's not for everyone. I personally had remarkable results. The interventional radiologist that I went to here in Atlanta, they were very clear on explaining that because of the size of my fibroids, that I may possibly get 50% shrinkage. The two largest were 11 centimeters and 7 centimeters, and 50% is what I got. And I'm happy with that. But I also know someone else who it didn't work for them. They had a horrible experience. I had remarkable results. And I'm happy that I allowed myself time to do my due diligence and do my own personal research to decide on what was best for me. Again, it's not a one size fits all, which is a reason why I really promote education and research because, it's very critical to understand what your needs are, what your goals are, if you're planning to have a baby or not, or travel or whatever it is. Just do your own personal research so you can determine what's most suitable for you. That was in 2019. So fast forward to 2022, I started to have unrelated fibroid symptoms. And I'm doing air quotes. And the reason why I'm doing air quotes is because the doctors could not figure out what was wrong with me. I started to have heart palpitations. I was passing out. I developed tingling and numbing in my fingers. I developed tremors. Literally, my body would tremble all day. And understand, these were symptoms that were accumulative. They were adding up to one on top of the other. It's not like I developed tremors and they went away. I mean, I literally lost like 11 pounds in like 2 weeks. My husband was so worried about me. And so one evening, we were on the couch. I sat up having heart palpitations. And my husband's like, what's wrong? I'm like, oh my God, call 911. He's like, are you sure? He saw the death stare in my face. He called the ambulance. They came, they took my vitals. They're like, were you outside sprinting? My resting heart rate was at a 160. The standard heart rate resting is at 60, anywhere from 60 to 100. Mine was at 160. They transported me to the local emergency room. The doctor ran every test you could think of, an MRI, a CAT scan, blood work, so on and so forth, found nothing. I left there with Xanax. I did not stop there though, because I knew something was going on with my body. I had yet again became my biggest cheerleader. I yet again became my greatest advocate. And I knew what that was like because I've had to do it before. So I was okay with that. So after going to doctor after doctor, my general practitioner, back to my OBGYN, a gastroenterologist, a mental health therapist, about the third or fourth cardiologist, she says, I want to run these scans on your legs. It's going to be 3 hours, pack your patients. I get in there, they perform the procedure, they perform these tests. About 5 days later, we had to do a follow-up virtual visit. And she asked me, have you ever been diagnosed with fibroids? Having no idea that I have the fibroid pandemic and having no idea what my sense of advocacy and humanitarianism is. And I kind of chuckled. I'm like, yes, I have. And she goes, well, while they were scanning your legs, they inadvertently crossed over your pelvis and you have rather large fibroids. And I believe this is the reason why you're having these quote unquote unrelated symptoms. You're passing out, palpitations, tingling, numbing, your ankles are swelling because your fibroids are blocking what's called your iliac vein, which is the main artery that recycles the blood supply from your lower extremities up to your heart. while I'm not 100% sure, I'm very confident this is what's going on. So fast forward to that was in May of 2023. In November of 2023, I had a robotic laparoscopic myomectomy. Basically, what a myomectomy is, where they're cutting open your uterus and remove the fibroids. So it's major surgery, but by me having it laparoscopic robotically, it's minimally invasive because they just do small incisions and extracting it through my belly button. The difference between a myomectomy is that they cut open your uterus and take out your fibroids. And a cesarean, they cut open your uterus and take out a baby. I am a little bit over 6 months post myomectomy. I'm thriving. I feel amazing. And I'm so happy that I made a decision to move forward. The psychosocial part of it, there's so many layers to it, to be honest with you. I initially I felt lost. I felt unheard because of the way in which I was diagnosed and the way in which I received the diagnosis. But not only that, I felt abandoned because I was left having to do my own personal research, right? Before I had any type of procedure done, I did my own research for 4.5 years. Statistically, they say women wait at least a minimum of 3 years. There are times where I did not show up for my friends because of my period. I was afraid of having an accident. There were times where I had to leave work unannounced because I just had an accident. There were times where I started to do what's called silent suffering, which is just suffering in silence, dealing with it all on your own, not really having an outlet, not only someone to speak to, but someone who can really help you. I started to suffer in silence by way of packing an extra pair of clothes because I was afraid I was going to have an accident. I started to suffer in silence because I would put a towel under my body when I went to bed. I would kind of sneak it underneath my bottom without my husband knowing because I was afraid I was going to have an accident. Silent suffering looked like being isolated because no one understood. And my tagline used to be, if fibroids were external, would you take them more seriously? If I was bleeding profusely on my face for 45 days straight, right? Would you take it more serious? I mean, for me, it was such a psychological roller coaster because days when I thought I was fine, I would have an accident. It's not only about the accidents, but the physical aspect of it, the bloating. I've been asked if I was pregnant. And then especially after my husband and I got married, the question started to come more often. So when you talk about the psycho part of it, it really, really wears on your mental. It wears on your self-efficacy. It really wears on your self-confidence. Um, you know, I've been told that I'm very confident young lady and type A personality, but little do you realize I would be sitting there crying because I knew I wanted to show up for my best friend or show up for work or for my spouse or for my child, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. I mean, being so lethargic and experiencing all these different symptoms, it was such an unpredictable situation. But now I am so happy. I'm so elated to be on the other side of that. One of the best resources out there that I've been working on is the Fibroid Pandemic's provider directory. That provider directory is going to consist of experts, doctors who practice Aboriginal Eastern medication, doctors who specialize in, Westernized medicine, dietitians, physical therapists, pelvic floor therapists, mental health therapists, doctors who perform minimally invasive procedures, major surgeries. It's going to be a full conglomerate, just a tool of resources that you can go to. So my goal is when you think of uterine fibroids, you automatically think of the fibroid pandemic. Number one, act sooner. Act sooner than later. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to yourself so that you can get back into the driver's seat of life and start to thrive. So acting sooner looks like becoming your biggest advocate, become your greatest cheerleader, get a second opinion, a third opinion, a fourth opinion. I don't care how many opinions you get. Get as many opinions necessary by different doctors until you feel that you have enough information to make a data-driven, educated decision. I literally believe I got four. And after that fourth one, the doctor said, you didn't need me. You knew everything already. Not that I was trying to be a know-it-all, but it made me feel good knowing that I had already done my research. Next, I would say when you go to your doctor's office, by doing your research, when you arrive at your doctor's, come question ready. Statistically, we get 6 to 10 minutes of FaceTime with our doctor. Don't wait until you get there to start asking questions because you're going to get flustered. They're going to rush you. And it's just not a way to really maximize your doctor visit. So in order to maximize it, come question ready. Do your research and already know what questions you want to ask. Next, I would say talk to your family members. Open your mouth. Have these conversations. Talk to your sister. Talk to your mother, your auntie, your daughter, your grandmother, your best friends. I tell you, after I started to share my story, literally about 4 or 5 of my close friends also said they had fibroids. My mother had them, my sister, my niece, who I call my daughter and my niece daughter I never had, by the way, my mother-in-law, and I meant mother-in-law, my husband's godmother. So many women are close circle. So once I started understanding, that allowed me to better advocate for myself. And then I would also say, understand your family history. While you're having these conversations, understand your family history so that, again, getting it back to, it allows you to best advocate for yourself so that you can act sooner. You owe it to yourself.